It is 1996. A small office in Sunnyvale, California. Jensen Huang, the CEO of a failing startup called Nvidia, picks up the phone. His hands are shaking. On the other end of the line is Shoichiro Irimajiri, the powerful head of Sega. Nvidia had promised Sega a revolutionary chip for their next game console. They had taken millions of dollars in advance. But Jensen has a confession to make. The chip is a disaster. It is technically broken. It is obsolete before it even launches. If Jensen tells the truth, Sega will pull the contract. Nvidia will run out of cash in exactly 30 days. If he lies, he might buy a few months, but the company will eventually collapse under the weight of a useless product. Jensen takes a breath. He chooses the most dangerous option of all. He tells the truth, and then he asks for a miracle. To understand how Nvidia became the most important company on Earth, you have to understand how close it came to never existing at all. In the early 1990s, the world of computer graphics was the Wild West. There were over 90 different companies fighting to put 3D images on your screen. Most of them are forgotten now. They were small, scrappy, and desperate. Nvidia was founded in 1993 inside a Denny's restaurant. Jensen Huang and his two co-founders didn't have an office. They just had a vision. They wanted to bring the power of arcade graphics into the home, but they made a fatal mistake. They bet on the wrong math. While the rest of the industry was moving toward triangles to build 3D worlds, Nvidia bet on quadrilaterals. It was a bet that would nearly destroy them. By 1995, Microsoft released Windows 95. Along with it came a software standard called DX. DX used triangles. Suddenly, Nvidia's technology was a language that no one else spoke. They were building a high-speed train for tracks that did not exist. This brings us back to that phone call with Sega. Nvidia had spent a year developing the NV2 chip for Sega's next console. Halfway through, Jensen realized they were building a failure. If they finished the chip, it would be a commercial catastrophe. Jensen flew to Japan. He sat across from Irimajiri and admitted that Nvidia's technology was the wrong path. He told the Sega CEO that they needed to stop. But then came the diving catch. Jensen asked Irimajiri to pay Nvidia the full contract anyway. He asked for $5 million for a product he would never deliver. It was an insane request. It was corporate suicide. But Irimajiri saw something in Jensen. He saw a leader who was brutally honest about his own failures. To the shock of everyone in the room, Sega agreed. They gave Nvidia the $5 million. It was just enough money to keep the lights on for 6 more months. Nvidia was down to its last strike. They had enough cash for exactly one more attempt. In the industry, this is called a one tape out. If the design has even one tiny bug, the company is dead. There is no money for a second try. Jensen gathered his engineers. He told them the truth. We are 6 weeks from bankruptcy. The clock was running backward. They worked on caffeine and pure panic, using the cold office carpet as their bedding. Failure wasn't an option. It was a death sentence. They abandoned their old math and embraced the industry standard. They were building the Revo 128. It wasn't just a graphics card. It was a statement. It had to be faster, cheaper, and better than anything from the giants like 3DF or Intel. In 1997, the Revo 128 launched. The tech world held its breath. If it flopped, Nvidia would be another footnote in Silicon Valley history. But it didn't flop. It exploded. Nvidia sold 1 million units in just 4 months. For the first time, they weren't just surviving, they were winning. They had pulled off the greatest diving catch in business history. But Jensen Huang wasn't satisfied with just winning the 90s. He was paranoid. He famously says that he still wakes up every morning feeling like the company is about to go out of business. This paranoia led to the next big gamble. In 2006, Nvidia released CUDA. It was a way to use graphics chips for things other than games, like scientific research and complex math. Wall Street hated it. For years, Nvidia spent billions of dollars on CUDA, while the market ignored it. Their stock price plummeted. Investors called for Jensen to be fired, but Jensen held the line. He knew that one day the world would need massive amounts of parallel computing power. He was waiting for a spark. And in 2012, that spark arrived. It was called deep learning. Researchers discovered that Nvidia's chips were perfect for training artificial intelligence. Suddenly, every tech giant on the planet, Google, Amazon, Meta, needed Nvidia. The near-death startup had become the arms dealer for the AI revolution. Today, Nvidia is no longer the underdog. It is a titan. It controls over 80% of the AI chip market. It is a monopoly so powerful that governments around the world are starting to get nervous. The company that was once 30 days from disappearing is now worth more than the GDP of many countries. But if you walk into Nvidia's headquarters today, you won't see a company resting on its laurels. You will see a culture of intellectual honesty. Jensen still encourages his employees to admit when they are wrong, just as he did with Sega 30 years ago. The business lesson is simple but terrifying. Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about having the courage to look failure in the eye and pivot before it kills you. Nvidia didn't become a trillion-dollar company because they were always right. They became one because they were willing to admit when they were wrong. They ran when others walked. They sacrificed their pride to save their future. And in the end, that $5 million gift from Sega became the most expensive, transformative act of kindness in corporate history. Because today, Nvidia doesn't just play the game,